Did you know that in 1997, Venom was almost brought to life with action star Dolph Lundgren in the lead? Imagine that. Now, let's explore how this fascinating character morphed through various creative visions to become the Venom we know today in the blockbuster hit. Join us as we unravel the tale of missed opportunities, shifting visions, and the high-tech magic that finally brought Venom to the big screen. Let's kick things off with how Venom almost made it to the big screen in the 90s, but didn't quite get there. Back in 1997, David S. Goyer had already written a script for a Venom movie with New Line Cinema in charge. They wanted Dolph Lundgren for the lead role, with plans to have Venom face off against Carnage, a well-known villain. There was a lot of potential for the thrilling, villain-focused movie, but it never got off the ground, and eventually, Sony Pictures ended up with the rights. Once Sony came into the picture, things changed for Venom. The character showed up in Spider-Man 3 in 2007, played by Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, Venom's human alter ego. Originally, Venom was meant to have a minor role. Now, with Venom appearing in Spider-Man 3, Sony wasn't done yet. They saw more potential and started planning a movie just for him. The producer, Avi Arad, wanted more from the character. He realized that the previous villains were mostly picked by director Sam Raimi and thought the movies were missing out on villains that the newer fans really liked. So Eddie Brock's role was rewritten to be a major villain as both himself and Venom. Jump to 2007, and Sony announced a plan for a standalone Venom movie, giving another opportunity to delve deeper into this complex character. By 2008, Sony was still trying to figure out the best approach for this project, similar to how Wolverine's character added longevity to the X-Men series. At first, Jacob Estes wrote a script, but Sony wasn't convinced and decided to go back to the drawing board with new writers. To really dive deep into Venom's world, Sony decided they needed a fresh take. This meant bringing in new writers to shake things up. In 2008, Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese came on to write. They suggested a darker, more realistic version of Venom. Their idea showed the symbiote causing mayhem in the city by jumping from person to person, making each one violently aggressive. This concept was a big change from the original script and even planned a unique role for Stan Lee. But there was still a debate about whether Topher Grace should come back as the lead, which brought up discussions about whether the character was likable and relatable enough as a villain. Wernick and Reese delivered a second draft of the Venom script in September 2009. Reese mentioned that Sony was moving forward with their plans, but details on how were vague. A month later, the project saw a major shift when Gary Ross, who was rewriting the script for Spider-Man 4 at the time, was brought in to rewrite the Venom script as well. He was also set to direct and produce the film alongside Avi Arad. By then, it looked unlikely that Topher Grace would return to play Venom. The new direction aimed to transform Venom from a villain to an anti-hero, a defender of the innocent. This would have essentially changed the core of Venom's character from the comics and would have made the film more about redemption than chaos. By 2010, Sony decided to reboot the Spider-Man franchise entirely, which directly impacted the direction of the Venom project. With a new Spider-Man universe in the works, Venom's movie could have been a part of a larger narrative, but these plans kept evolving. In 2012, Josh Trank was considered for directing and proposed an R-rated Venom, similar to the tone of The Mask. This version would have been edgier and more intense, potentially appealing to an older audience and setting a different tone compared to other superhero films at the time. But producer Matt Tolmach was not on board with this darker vision, which led to yet another directional shift. In June, discussions between Arad and Tolmach explored how Venom could connect to The Amazing Spider-Man, aiming for a synergy similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe's crossover strategy. Arad emphasized that it would be strictly an Eddie Brock story, but Tolmach hinted at a larger interconnected universe where hopefully all these worlds will live together in peace someday. By the end of 2013, Sony was planning to use The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as a launchpad for a larger universe based around their Marvel characters, including Venom. Writers Alex Kurtzman, Roberto Orci, and Ed Solomon were on board, with Kurtzman also directing. Plans were to release Venom after The Amazing Spider-Man 3, set for 2016. But when The Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't do well, Sony had to rethink their plans. They pushed The Amazing Spider-Man 3 to 2018 and moved the Venom movie, now called Venom Carnage, up to 2017. In 2015, Sony and Marvel Studios announced a partnership to bring Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with Marvel producing the next Spider-Man film. Sony still wanted to make their own spin-off films, but by late 2015, it seemed those plans were on hold to focus on the reboot with Marvel. Venom got another chance in 2016, with new producers and a new writer, Dante Harper. The idea was to start fresh with a standalone film that would kick off a new series. In 2018, Sony confirmed that Tom Hardy would star as Eddie Brock and Venom, directed by Ruben Fleischer. This was the beginning of what they called Sony's Spider-Man universe. Fleischer was excited about the project, especially exploring the theme of duality in Venom's character. Before Fleischer was chosen, David F. Sandberg was considered, but he decided to direct Shazam because he knew the crew well from previous work at New Line Cinema. Each change in direction, whether in tone, character portrayal, or cinematic universe alignment, shows just how many different versions of Venom could have reached the screen, each with its own unique flavor and appeal. After settling on the story, the next big step was to bring Venom to life. Sony used some serious tech to make sure he looked just as scary as he should. Creating the Venom character for the film was a big task that involved a lot of digital tricks to make him look real and scary. Venom is super tall at 7 feet 7 inches and heavy at 500 pounds. His skin looks smooth, oily, and very black, just like in the comic books, but made to look real for the movie. The designers focused on what makes Venom unique, especially his eyes and long tongue. His eyes are big and don't have pupils, kind of like a killer whale's, so they had to animate them and find a way that really shows where he's looking. His long tongue, a famous part of his look, got its own special setup, so it could move in all sorts of ways and even pull back so Venom could talk without it getting in the way, which would look pretty funny. Venom's voice is rough and tough.
Face right off your head, do you understand?
Inspired by actors like Jack Palance and Clint Eastwood. He often talks through his clenched teeth. Since Venom's story in the movie isn't connected to Spider-Man, it didn't make sense to put Spider-Man's symbol on him. Instead, they gave him a subtle V on his chest, made from white veins, which also helps you see him better in the dark scenes. To make sure Venom didn't just blend into the background at night, the team lit him up like you would light a car in a commercial, using reflections to show off his shape and muscles. The digital version of Venom was made to be very flexible. This meant the animators could change the size of the head and the length of his teeth, and even make his jaw drop open wide, depending on what the scene needed. Originally, Tom Hardy wanted to use a special camera setup to capture his own movements and expressions for Venom, which would have made Venom's actions feel more like Tom Hardy's. This could have added a personal touch to the character, making Venom seem more real and connected to Hardy's performance. But because Hardy looks so different from the exaggerated features of Venom, they decided not to use this technology. Instead, they used a very tall stand-in actor during filming to get Venom's size right. This change meant that some of Hardy's personal acting style didn't come through in Venom. While developing the Venom film, director Ruben Fleischer planned to build a big world with many characters, including other symbiotes like the villain Riot. Fleischer wanted Venom to be different from other superheroes. He aimed to make it neither as light as Marvel's movies, nor as dark as DC's. He believed it was important to show Venom's violent side from the comics, where Venom is known for biting off heads and eating brains. But Sony's executives were careful about making the movie too violent. They were concerned that giving Venom an R rating for strong violence could limit its ability to join lighter, family-friendly movies like Spider-Man in future crossovers. Ultimately, to keep the movie open to a wider audience and fit with the other superhero characters, Venom was given a PG-13 rating, toning down some of its violence. Imagine how different Venom could have been if it had embraced its full violent potential from the comics. And that wraps up our journey through the evolution of Venom. If you enjoyed uncovering the twists and turns of how this iconic character made it to the big screen, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one!